brilliant from Mbeumo to flick it round the corner to Bruno Fernandes. Fernandes got option, right, left, centre, finds Mbeumo in the area. Brian Mbeumo scores! A cutting counter-attack. Excellent. Brian Mbeumo gives Manchester United.
For 13 years, Manchester United forgot how to be Manchester United. 7 managers, 7 different visions, 7 attempts to rebuild a club that once ruled English football, and 7 times the same painful ending. A trophy here, a false dawn there, and then back to the beginning again. Fans who grew up watching this club win league titles like it was routine spent over a decade watching it become a punchline instead. The lowest finish in the club's Premier League history. A home defeat to a 4th division side. A manager standing alone in the pouring rain, watching his own team fall apart in front of him, and nobody in that stadium quite knowing how it had gotten this bad. That is not the club anyone expected to be talking about this season. And yet here we are. Because something is happening at Old Trafford right now that should genuinely worry every other club in the Premier League. This is not another false dawn. This is not another new manager bounce that fades by November. This is a team that, over the second half of last season, collected more points than any other club in England. More than Manchester City. More than the champions themselves. Bruno Fernandes, 31 years old, produced the greatest single-season creative campaign the Premier League has ever seen, matching a record held jointly by Thierry Henry and Kevin De Bruyne. Kobbie Mainoo, finally trusted and finally settled, became one of the most reliable midfielders in the country. A 19-year-old academy graduate named Shea Lacey walked into a preseason friendly against Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid and looked like the calmest player on the pitch, scoring, creating, and controlling the game like someone who had done it for years, not months. And behind them, an attack United built for over £200 million finally started clicking into place, with Brian Mbeumo and Benjamin Sesko each finding the back of the net 11 times in a matter of months. This is a team that beat every single member of the traditional Big Six. Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, not scraped past, beat, and still, almost nobody outside Manchester believes it's real. The betting markets have actually drifted away from United since the summer began. Arsenal are still the favorites. Manchester City are still second in the market, even while replacing Pep Guardiola. Liverpool are ahead of United too. The consensus is polite but dismissive. Nice story, great few months. But it's a small sample size, and small sample sizes have fooled people before. Maybe they're right to be cautious. This club has broken the hearts of its own supporters more times than anyone can count. Every single revival since Sir Alex Ferguson walked away in 2013 was declared the real one, right up until it wasn't. A cup here, a contract extension there, and then the same collapse, the same sacking, the same headlines asking what went wrong this time. But there is something different sitting underneath this version of Manchester United. Something that isn't just about form or momentum or one exceptional half season that will inevitably regress back to the mean. It's about what this club had to lose completely before it could find a reason to believe in itself again. Because before there was any of this, before the points tally, before the record-breaking assists, before a teenager started outplaying grown professionals in front of 80,000 people, there was a night in the pouring rain that told you everything about how far this club had actually fallen. To understand how far Manchester United actually fell, you have to go back to a cup exit that summed up an entire era of dysfunction in 90 humiliating minutes. Ruben Amorim's United crashed out of the Carabao Cup in the second round to Grimsby Town, a club playing 4 divisions below them. The image that came to define that night, and in many ways that entire spell in charge, was Amorim standing alone on the touchline in the pouring rain, watching his team miss penalty after penalty, looking like a man who had already lost control of the dressing room. His refusal to move away from his beloved 3-4-2-1 system frustrated everyone inside the club, from the players to the boardroom. Every great manager adapts. Amorim wouldn't. The results told their own story. United finished that season in 15th place, the worst finish in the club's Premier League history. Bruno Fernandes, the same player who would go on to become the league's best footballer within months, was being played as a deep-lying central midfielder, stripped of the freedom that made him dangerous. Kobbie Mainoo barely featured at all. United lost 4 consecutive matches to Tottenham. They were embarrassed by Grimsby. There was no identity, no clear plan, and no belief left in a dressing room that had once been the benchmark for winning in English football. Amorim was dismissed in January 2026, with United sitting just outside the top 5, but showing no signs of genuine progress. Darren Fletcher held things together for 8 days as caretaker. Nobody inside Old Trafford was under any illusion about what the club actually needed next. Not another expensive philosophical project, but somebody who understood exactly what these players were capable of. Then Michael Carrick walked back through the door. 14 months earlier, Carrick had been sacked by Middlesbrough, a mid-table championship club, after they finished 10th and missed the playoffs. No Premier League club came calling. By every conventional measure, his managerial career looked like it was going backwards, not forwards. And when United appointed him as interim boss, the reaction from most of the football world was that the club had gone cheap and sentimental, handing the biggest job in English football to a club legend with no top-flight managerial record, simply because the hierarchy couldn't agree on anyone bigger. What happened next changed everything. Carrick's first move wasn't complicated. He scrapped Amorim's rigid back three and restored a familiar 4-2-3-1. Center-backs went back to natural positions, full-backs were given clear jobs, and Bruno Fernandes was moved back into the space between the lines, closer to goal, where his talent had always belonged. His first match in charge ended in a 2-0 win over Manchester City at Old Trafford. 8 days later, United went to league leaders Arsenal and won 3-2, coming from behind twice and refusing to fold the way this squad had folded so many times before under previous managers. From that January afternoon to the end of the season, Manchester United collected 39 points from 17 league matches. 12 wins, 3 draws, only 2 defeats. No club in England, including the eventual champions, picked up more points across that stretch. United climbed from 7th place all the way to 3rd, securing a return to the Champions League after a 2-year absence, and doing it by beating every single member of the traditional Big Six along the way. That is the story everyone already knows. What matters now is what came next, and why this summer might be the moment that decides whether Manchester United finally have something real, or whether this becomes just another chapter in 13 years of false hope. Michael Carrick didn't just fix a broken half season. He used it to figure out exactly what this squad needed to stop being a good story and start being a genuine threat. And this summer, United went out and got precisely that. Casemiro's departure at the end of his contract left a gap in midfield that United could not afford to ignore, especially after Manuel Ugarte suffered a serious knee injury at the World Cup. Kobbie Mainoo was suddenly the only fully fit senior midfielder on the books, so the club moved fast. Andre Santos arrived from Chelsea, a 22-year-old Brazilian who had barely started regularly at Stamford Bridge, but immediately looked like a perfect fit next to Mainoo, technically secure, defensively disciplined, and capable of chipping in with goals from deep, exactly the kind of profile Casemiro used to provide. Yuri Tielemans followed from Aston Villa, a 29-year-old Belgian international with over 240 Premier League appearances and the kind of calm, controlling presence that lets a team dictate tempo instead of chasing it. And then came the preseason friendly that made the rest of the league sit up. United beat Atletico Madrid 2-1, and it wasn't the scoreline that mattered, it was the manner of the performance. For long stretches, Manchester United were the better team against one of the most tactically stubborn managers in world football. They pressed high and aggressively, forcing turnovers deep in Atletico's half. They controlled the tempo when they needed to slow the game down. And in the middle of it all was Shea Lacey, 19 years old, trusted with the number 10 role usually reserved for Bruno Fernandes, delivering a performance with numbers that read like a player twice his age. He won a penalty through nothing but footwork, a manufactured moment built entirely from his own composure under pressure that most teenagers wouldn't even attempt, let alone execute. Andre Santos looked like he'd been at the club for years, splitting Atletico's midfield with line-breaking passes over and over, then reading danger well enough on the other end to shut it down before it ever became a real threat. Mason Mount, finally freed from the number 10 role that had swallowed his confidence for 2 years, looked like a completely different player dropped into a deeper position where he could actually see the game in front of him. This is where the real story of this Manchester United side starts to take shape. It isn't about one brilliant signing or one tactical trick. It's about a squad that United had already spent over £200 million building the year before. Benjamin Sesko, Brian Mbeumo, Mateus Cunha, finally being wrapped inside a structure that lets all of that talent function as one team instead of 11 individuals hoping for the best. Sesko and Mbeumo each scored 11 league goals last season despite joining midway through a campaign of constant tactical upheaval. Cunha continues to look like the connective tissue between midfield and attack. And underneath all of it, an academy production line that hasn't stopped. Shea Lacey, Cheeto Obi, Harry Amas, and a 15-year-old named JJ Gabriel who people inside Carrington are already describing as a generational talent. There is still a real question mark hanging over all of this, and it deserves to be said honestly. 17 league games is 17 league games. New manager bounces happen all the time in football, and they fade just as often as they last. Carrick has never managed a full season in the Premier League, and his only prior European experience amounts to 3 caretaker matches 5 years ago. The calendar is about to get significantly harder too, with a minimum of 6 extra Champions League nights against the best teams on the continent, and questions remain about whether a high, aggressive press can hold up once United face opponents with the pace to punish it in behind. But here is what makes this version of Manchester United different from every other false dawn this club has sold its supporters over the last 13 years. The spending isn't chaotic anymore. The rebuild already happened last summer. This year's business was surgical, replacing exactly what was lost and adding exactly what was missing. The fixture list has been kind, with Sky Sports calling United's opening 6 games the statistically easiest run in the entire league. And for the first time in over a decade, Manchester United are not starting over. They are building on something that already worked. 13 years ago, this club lost the only manager who ever knew how to turn talent into trophies, and it spent over a decade forgetting how to do it without him. 7 managers came and went, each one promising the same thing, and each one leaving the same way. But somewhere between a humiliating night in the rain against Grimsby Town and a composed, commanding performance against one of Europe's most feared coaches, something at Old Trafford finally started to shift. The giant that has been sleeping for over 13 years is beginning to twitch, and if it fully wakes up this season, the rest of the Premier League will not get much warning before it happens.